All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are ready to reconvene for our final speaker for today's conference. So our final speaker is Rachel Whaley. Rachel is a social worker, youth development leader, and health equity advocate at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. As a part of the Strong for Life team, she implements emotional wellness programming in clinical settings and mentors children living with chronic autoimmune disorders. Rachel earned her bachelor's degree in social work from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and went on to earn her Master of Social Work degree from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Rachel Whaley.
Hello, everyone. If you don't mind, we're going to start out by just scanning this QR code. If you are getting continuing education credits, this is to ensure that we have your information and that you get all of those. If it's not coming up for you for some reason, I'll have this about halfway through the presentation as well, and I can always go back at the beginning, but I'll give you about 20 more seconds here. It should just be a web page with a couple of questions. And while you're doing that, I would love to give you our official welcome to Building Resilience, a Whole Child Approach. All right, I promise you will see this exact QR code again, but I'm going to move on forward. I have no disclosures to share with all of you today. And just as Kendrick said, my name is Rachel Whaley. I have about 10 years of experience in social work and youth development, and I also have about 10 years of experience as a young person with my own chronic autoimmune condition as well. So both being a patient and having a passion for working with youth is really what fuels my why behind the work that we do and the incredible work that you all are doing. So I believe you saw my colleague Erin speaking before lunch, but I come from the same group that she does, Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, and within that, Strong for Life. So our goal is to really start with that whole child approach, and we do that by working with the whole community. So I have the honor of working with providers to deliver our resilience information, and then the other members of my team work with adults in schools, in early childhood education centers, in summer camps, in faith-based organizations. So we are all around the community with the goal of sharing some aligned messaging when it comes to prevention education and supporting our young ones. So our objectives for today are to increase knowledge of your role in building resilience in all youth. So these are strategies from a prevention and promotion kind of lens. So these are strategies that we think can be applied to all of our young people and all of our patients. We also want to increase your knowledge of the strategies to build awareness, identification, expression, and proactive management of feelings in all youth. And we want you to feel comfortable utilizing the toolkit items to build resilience during those well child visits. So I am going to share out some statistics to start us. I think it can be really helpful in just kind of grounding what we do and why we do it. But likely these statistics are not going to be huge surprises to you. You all are the ones on the ground doing the work day in and day out. So you are probably well aware of these statistics. They might even seem higher in your area. So we know that 1 in 6 children in the U.S. from birth to age 17 has a mental, behavioral, or developmental disorder, and this comes from NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. We also know when we will look at our leading causes of death over here on the left side, when we're looking at youth aged 10 to 14, we have suicide here coming in at second. And when we look over on the right side of this chart, youth aged 15 to 19, we see suicide being the third leading cause of death, only to recently be replaced by homicide. We want to talk about this for a couple of reasons. One, we know that when depression and anxiety are present in our patients, the risk for suicidality goes up. So that's something we always want to be aware of and screening for. And on this right side, we see unintentional injury, homicide, and suicide. Those are all instances where firearms can be involved. So if you're like me and if you're still learning to have some of those challenging conversations when it comes to asking about, are there firearms in the home where my young person's going to be? Or having conversations with families about safe storage in your well visits. This is a QR code that links to an article that our injury and illness prevention team put out there that just has some really helpful talking points to be able to take it and make it authentic to yourself if that's a conversation around safe storage that you would want some support with. Also, when we talk about mental health and when we're talking about firearms and safe storage, I always like to point out that our evidence does show that when we think about firearms and mental health, folks who are living with mental health conditions and mental health disorders are more likely to harm themselves than others. So when we talk about mental health and trying to disband some of that stigma, which we'll get to more of, that is something that we want to be mindful of as well. So we also know that about 50% of all lifetime mental health cases begin by the age of 14. So that is half of those symptoms are popping up before age 14. And I want to know what you think the number of years on average is between the onset of those symptoms and intervention. So between the time that we're seeing symptoms and direct support is being given, how many years? Feel free to throw it out there. 5, okay. 10. Anybody 20, 30, 50? No, 5 to 10, okay. We're right around that range. So 8 to 11 years on average. And of course, this is national data. So it might be a little bit different depending on where we are and who we're talking with. But I share this statistic all the time, multiple times a week, and it still is really jarring to me every time that I read it out loud. 8 to 10 years we know is such an incredibly long time. So why do we think this large gap exists? Why is it a decade between when we see those onset of symptoms and when we see some support? Stigma, yeah, absolutely. What else?
No.
Say it again. Denial, absolutely. And when we talk about our young people, when we talk about caregivers, they might be in denial because that can be really hard to accept. They might also not have education around that. A lot of our young people may not know that the physical symptoms that they're experiencing can also be linked with their mental health. So if I'm a middle schooler and I'm getting terrible stomach aches around the same time once a week, it might be a GI issue, right? It might just be solely physical. Once we start asking more questions and opening up the conversation, we might start to see, oh, maybe it's related to anxiety. Maybe you're having really big tests those hours that you're getting these stomach aches right before. So if I'm asking the open-ended question, talk to me about what's going on when you get those stomach aches, right? When we open it up for more conversation, we're likely to be able to speak to that mind-body connection. So this is a quote by Desmond Tutu, South African human rights activist and Nobel Peace Prize winner, that we think really speaks to the work we do and why we do it. So as I read it out loud, I just want you to be able to think about how this relates to mental health. There comes a point where we need to just stop pulling people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in. So that is really why we do the work that we do. And when it comes to mental health, we know that we're in the midst of a mental health crisis. And so we want to be able to think not just about intervention and what are our young people's needs right now, but how do we start to plan decades before that and try and have conversations with them, support them with those skills that they need for the ups and downs of life, So that is where we start talking about building resilience, which is the core of what we're going to continue talking about today. So when I say resilience, I'd love to hear from 2 or 3 people. What are some words or phrases that come to mind?
Hanging in there.
Hanging in there, yeah. What else? Yeah.
Unbreakable.
Unbreakable, yeah. Bounce back, yeah. We get that one a lot. I see some nodding heads for all of those too. Anything else? Yeah, so when we think about resilience, we have multiple different definitions. And I know for me, when I was a young person, bouncing back was the most common kind of term, or powering through, right? Put your head down, you got this. To be resilient, you're strong, you're unbreakable, right? And there's a lot of power and strength in those messages, so we don't want to diminish those. But we also want to recognize that if we're focused on bouncing back to the same place we were in before a challenge or adversity, we're likely not learning anything from it. And we know that adversities change us, right? So we want to be able to equip our young people to move through those adversities, to be able to learn from them and feel prepared to handle life's ups and downs. So that's really just the simple definition that we use as a team. The ability to handle life's ups and downs. So we know that resilient children are better able to cope with challenges, manage stress, and make healthy choices. And we know that we're all capable of building resilience, not just young people, but ourselves. I am continuously building my own resilience. It was a long car ride for me to get here. There was a lot of traffic and I was running up those stairs. So as you can maybe see under the beautiful bright lights, I'm glistening in sweat still. So it's not just young people. We can continue to build our resilience as well. But really the reason that we want to continue to do that is because we're all so comfortable talking about physical health, right? But it is just as important when we're talking about growth and development that we align that with mental health too, because it all falls under the category of health. So when we're speaking to mental and physical health, that's really when we're going to start to be able to foster that resiliency. These are our healthy habits. These are things that I am sure are a part of your everyday conversation with youth and families. Eat smarter, drink water, screens away, go play. Get rest to be your best. That's my favorite one. Anyone else in the crowd like rest? Yeah, okay, thank you for nodding your head. And then emotions are real, express how you feel. So that's really where we step into incorporating more mental health strategies. And from a prevention lens, what that really looks like is identification, expression, and management, coping with feelings. So on a scale of 1 to 5, or since I'm going to say you can either shout it out loud or you can use your kind of thumb barometer here. How comfortable are you talking with patients and families about mental health, emotional wellness? So if you're all the way up here, you're like, I could go do it right now. Here, some stuff is okay. Some stuff is more challenging for me. Here is, I want to keep learning. I don't feel confident yet. Where are we at? Okay, yeah. So I see a wide variety in the room, and that's good. If you are here, that means that hopefully a lot of this will be a review and you can sharpen some of those skills. And if not, if you're somewhere in the middle or feeling less confident, then hopefully you get to take away some strategies that you want to try today. The goal is not to be perfect at this. The goal is to try it out. Take some of the strategies that we just go through, make them your own, make it authentic to you and the language you use and the way that you're used to speaking with your patients. And if you have some questions, we're going to talk through those too. So the reason why it's so important for you all to be able to speak to physical health and mental health is because young people and families often trust you. A lot of the time you are serving as that SSNR in their lives, and you can work to support their caregiver in being an SSNR in the lives of their young person. So when we say that, it's a safe, stable, nurturing relationship. safe, meaning free from physical and psychological harm, stable, meaning predictable and consistent, and nurturing, meaning being responsive to the needs of each unique individual child. And we know that youth who have at least one SSNR in their life are more likely to develop that sense of resiliency. So this is really what we're going to spend the core of the rest of our time doing together. We're going to go through these circles, building blocks for resilience. These are all evidence informed. Circles is just simply the acronym that we use to be able to remember all of these glorious evidence informed themes. But as we go through each one of these, what I really want you to think about is which one of these do you feel confident in already? That's important to celebrate what you're doing. We don't get a ton of breaks during the day or time to reflect and think on what we're doing well. And I think that's really important. I also want you to be able to think about which one of these you want to continue to try and add more tools in your toolkit for. And I also want you to think about which one of these you want to be able to speak to families more with. So our first resilience building block is communication. So communication builds resiliency by teaching children how to effectively connect with others and share their needs. So we know that youth are not born telling us what they need, right? That would be amazing, but that is not the case at all. So we know that youth depend on their caregivers and other adults to be able to help them meet their needs. And we want to be that bridge as adults that helps listen to and observe what we see and try to help them name those needs so that as they age and grow, they're able to say, this is what I need, right? I'm feeling really tired. I need to rest, as opposed to what we might often see throwing a chair across the room, right? Or I'm just going to stop right here and throw my hands up and just cry, right? So those types of things, those behaviors, we like to say that behavior is communication. I have heard that so much in my youth work, all throughout different states and cities. Behavior is communication. So we want to take those behaviors that we're seeing and we want to help young people start to label those feelings. And we do that through a couple of strategies. Talking about our feelings daily, having open conversations, and especially being able to just use open-ended questions. So there's nothing wrong with a yes-no question. We're just always going to get a yes-no answer, right? Some of the time, those are really important, especially as we're going through our checklist. But something that I want to invite everyone here to be really mindful of and intentional about is keeping track of how many times are you using a yes-no question and when are you able to open that up a little bit more. So we can go through some examples after this, but essentially just being able to say, instead of, did you have a good day? Is school going well? You're feeling okay, right? Those are all yes or no questions. We want to try and open those back up. So talk to me about how school is going, or what was the most challenging part of your day? What's something you're really proud of that's going on at school right now? Talk to me about home. What's something new that you're learning there? So we really like this kind of visual of an iceberg because I think this is really what communication is about and how powerful it can be. Some of those behaviors or some of those symptoms are what we might be seeing above the water or above that surface. And we really want to be able to take that conversation, open it up to see what might be going on underneath the surface. We want to get curious about that. And I think it's really important to really focus on that curiosity rather than that knowing or assuming, because what looks like anger or frustration or sadness for me might look totally different for someone else, right? So if I'm angry, it's usually because I'm hungry. Whereas for some young people, it might be they're feeling really frustrated. They're way beyond the level of their math and they're bored in class, so they're frustrated with it, right? So again, when we open that up with those open-ended questions, usually starting with who, what, where, when, or why, those are the kinds of conversations that can really help us to understand, oh, maybe this is related to something else. Next, we have independence, which builds resilience by developing a child's confidence to try things on their own. We want to encourage caregivers to allow their kids to try things on their own. We want to allow them to make safe mistakes, meaning where they're free from harm or where there's a really low risk for any type of physical or psychological harm. And one of the really great ways that we can go about building that independence and kind of fostering that agency is by offering choices. Our young people are told no so often. Unfortunately, that is like quintessential to being a kid, right? Don't do this, don't do that. No, we're going over here. You can't do that. So we want to be people that open that up and give some of that power back to them so that they're feeling a little more agency, especially when it comes to their own body, their own needs. So whenever we can, we want to be able to offer choices. So maybe there's a part of the well visit that I can say, hey, do you want to talk about school first, or do you want to talk about how you've been feeling physically? So we can offer that voice and choice whenever we can. For a vaccination, for example, even something as simple as, we do need to have a vaccination today. You're up for your immunization shot. You get to decide, do you want it in your left arm or your right arm, right? So something as simple as that, we get to give them back some of that agency. So I want you all to think about some of those common examples where you can incorporate that. A really great way to do this, and what it says up here, is offering a forced choice. That is simply a this or that kind of choice. So that narrows in where for some youth, especially younger youth, or maybe our youth on the autism spectrum, where a lot of options can be super overwhelming. I know that's the case for me too. Just being able to say, do you want the sticker or do you want the mint on your way out the door? Rather than, what would you like to have? So really think about how you can continue to empower your patients and families through choices. And next we have routines. These build resiliency by creating a sense of safety and predictability. I think routines are absolutely essential to healthy youth development. I think one of the reasons COVID was so hard for all of us is because it threw us all the way off our routines, right? Or how many of us get to go on trips or vacations or staycations where you get to relax. It's amazing. You love going for a couple days, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks. Maybe some people out there are like, nope, 2 months would be ideal. But after a while, you might start to get that feeling of like, yeah, this was a really good experience, but I'm kind of ready to get back to my routine and get in the flow, right? So we crave routines and consistency as human beings. And our youth sometimes might be showing the exact opposite of that, right? That they don't want those rigid kind of rules, but they really thrive more with routines. So we want to be able to focus on sleep and wake routines with families. We want to be able to create healthy habits around those. So for example, if we're talking about sleep routines, instead of being able to say, hey, you got to sleep more and keeping it at that, I know we don't have any more minutes than 10 to 15, depending on the number of siblings that y'all are connecting with, but if there's even a little bit of time to just be able to say, sounds like sleep has been hard lately, talk to me about what the nighttime routine is, right? And maybe that's where we talk about deep breathing or some coping skills like progressive muscle relaxation, where we're doing some tense and release, right? We're getting our body and our mind kind of ready to start to wind down for bed. And if we're teaching those skills to a caregiver and a young person, maybe that's something that they can do together before bed, right? Because whatever regulation skills that we're going through with children, it's just as beneficial to be talking about those in front of caregivers and to be modeling how important we think those are for development. We also want to create family routines around healthy communication. You all know your patients and families best. So I know that in the past, this might have looked like an hour-long sit-down dinner. We're busy humans. Our patients are busy people too. So we want to be able to find different ways and partner with them and ask them questions and give them some ideas to help them figure out, if it's not that, maybe at the end of the day, we're doing what I just did before. How was your day? Give me one of these. And maybe they're telling us, oh, it's in the middle. Talk to me about what that means, right? So just having some more communication. Next, we have coping skills, which build resilience by teaching students how to manage their emotions. By students, we mean all young people. So we want to teach new skills when everyone is calm. We want to practice these regularly. We want to try lots of different skills, and we want to be able to model those healthy coping strategies ourselves. And we're going to go into why it's really important to practice those while we're feeling calm in a moment. But just some more things to keep in mind when we're bringing those coping skills into our provider space. We want to suggest these without forcing them, because we want this to be a pleasant introduction. We want them to be able to see, is this something that I like? I want to be able to try it and see what feels good, what doesn't. So we do not want to force anyone to do a coping skill unless it's something that they're open to trying. I know for me, I love deep breathing. I love going for walks. If someone asks me to journal to try and get calm and balanced, I may smile and nod, but I will know that does not work for me. Journaling is a great coping skill, right? Simply not for me. Tried it multiple times. Not for me, and that's okay. So you all know what things work for you, and you can continue to find that out. And those are the things we really want to build for our patients and young people. So that doesn't mean saying, okay, pick this, you don't need to do that. It just means, have you tried this before? What was that like? What didn't you enjoy about it? We also want to follow the child's lead based on their comfort level and recognize that the office might not be the most comfortable space. So maybe we say, I want you to pick one of these and I'll show you how to do it. And then if you want, you can try it tonight. Maybe you two can actually try it together. Or maybe you and your sibling can try this. And remember, what works for one child doesn't always work for another. Just like I said, for us as adults too, coping skills are not a one-size-fits-all solution. So we have to try a variety, and we have to try them at different times in different scenarios to really be able to figure out what we need. So this is the hand model of the brain. Has anyone heard of Dan Siegel before? Maybe. He does some great work with trauma and how that can live in your body. But he started to do a lot more than just talking about what we can do when challenging or adverse experiences happen, but really just how can we help ourselves to regulate and get back to that sense of balance and calm. So this is something that I actually like to do with young people. So you can do it along if you'd like. No worries if you're not feeling it today. But essentially what I do is I just put up my palm. I take my thumb and cross it across my palm, and then I take my other fingers and I wrap them right around that thumb. So this is our hand model of the brain. We have our brain stem here. So when our system is like this, it's online. So this is our calm brain. I'm guessing most of us in the room have this kind of online system going on right now, right? We're taking deep, slow breaths. We're engaged. We're listening. We're able to learn and process new information. We're thinking rationally, we're reasoning, right? So what happens when our lid is flipped? We are stressed. We're overwhelmed. Maybe we are running from our car to this presentation up the stairs. Not naming names. It's me. When our lid is flipped, essentially what that means is that we automatically are going into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode, right? So it's really important, I think, to be able to help young people and their caregivers understand that that's not a choice, that it's happening automatically. And the reason that we're practicing these coping skills when our system is online is because that's when we can take new information in, right? That's when we can learn new things. And that's really going to help us when we get to this place where our lid is flipped, whether it's for kids or adults. We're going to be able to get back to this calm. The more that we have practiced those coping skills when we're calm, the more that we've tried different ones, then our body remembers, and it's going to help us get back to that state of balance. I also think this can be really helpful when talking with caregivers about how when our lid is flipped, we can't think our way out of that, right? So if I'm super upset and if someone says to me, okay, just calm down, right? Right. Yes. Thank you. That is exactly right. So we can't just calm down when we're really stressed or really overwhelmed, right? That would be super convenient if we could. But usually it does the exact opposite because it's frustrating. We can't just think our way out of it. We would if we could. So we got to be able to partner with our body, slow things down, and get back to that balanced state. So I think that can be really empowering once families start to know my child is screaming and going wild all over the place. I don't know what to do. I keep telling them to calm down, right? So being able to say, actually, I just learned something. In those moments, it's really not a choice. So we got to work with our bodies to be able to bring it back down. And then when you start to see slower breaths, and when you start to see those fists start to get unclenched, that's when you can start to have those conversations about, talk to me about what's going on. What was the thing that upset you? Let's figure out what happened. So we have some coping skills practice. These are 5 different categories. I'm going to call on some help and support from all of you. This is a handout that we have. It's in handout form, and we have it in poster form as well. It's available to print on our website, but we'll also go through at the end. If 50% of your clinic is taking these trainings, then you get an awesome toolkit, and then you just get to order these kinds of handouts and keep ordering them, as many as you need for your patients. When they run out, you order them again, and it's all free just because you have taken our training. The only reason that we want that to happen is because we want everybody to feel really comfortable using these and incorporating them into their well visits. So more on that after this. But for our coping skills practice, I'm going to go through each category at the top. And I want you all to think about, what is your go-to coping skill? Maybe it's something that you do when you're feeling calm because it feels good. Maybe it's something that when you're really stressed, this is something that helps you return to that state of balance. And if that category applies to you, if it's be active, I'm going to say it out loud, and I want you to make some noise like, woo, woo, that's me, so we can hear one another and know that there's a variety of coping skills in the room. So if you are someone, when you're stressed and overwhelmed, you like to be active. Where are you at? Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. I saw a casual hand raise. We do have some. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Walking counts? Anyone enjoy walking? That's me. Only running I do is, I already told you about it today. So finding your calm. Who likes to find their calm? Maybe you're having a drink of water. You're doing some deep breathing. Yeah, awesome. Okay. What about getting creative? Maybe you are painting. You're writing things down. You are playing a song. You know your music that you like that helps get you to a calm space. That one I am jealous of. I'm going to keep practicing my creative coping skills because those do not come naturally to me, but I really like that. Connecting with others. You hop on a phone call. You got to talk it out with your person, right? Maybe you just need to ask someone for help. You can write a letter and tell someone, this is what was going on. And shifting your mindset. Maybe you're focusing on what you can control instead of all of the things that feel out of control. Anyone? I forgot to do the woo-woo thing, so some of you got off the hook. But one of the great ways to be able to use this, especially with teens and older adolescents who might not be the most forthcoming with sharing out all of their favorite coping skills, you can use this just as a handout and say, hey, I want you to take a moment and look at these. Can you circle 3 things that you're already doing to stay healthy? And then maybe we talk about those, and then I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to have you look at this list again, and then can you star something that you would be willing to try at least once, maybe a couple times between now and the next time you see me. And then if you need to, you can kind of add a little bit more to that. The reason that I'm talking about this, it might seem kind of awkward that I'm talking about this with you. Maybe it doesn't, but it's because it's just as important to take care of your mental health as it is your physical health, right? So practice incorporating that into your language. Again, you know how to make it authentic. You know how to relate to your patients best. But try practicing, because I know for me, it's been incredibly awkward the first couple times, but once I've found my groove, it's felt a lot more comfortable. Next, we have limits, which build resilience by teaching children to understand boundaries and expectations. So we want to encourage caregivers to use limits to teach rather than to punish or control. We want to offer simple choices, and we want to set reasonable and relevant consequences. I think limits can be really helpful when we're talking about communication, relating those back together. So when we're setting limits, we want to encourage caregivers to do that with the behavior as opposed to the feeling. So I used that example before of, I'm so upset, I'm so angry, I might be throwing a chair across the room, right? Or I might be shouting. Those things are the behaviors that we can set the limit on, but we want to be able to validate the feeling that's underneath it. So, hey, it is not safe to throw chairs. It's okay to be angry. Let's talk about what's making you angry, right? So we want to encourage caregivers to be doing that. Next, we have emotional expression, which builds resilience by allowing children to express, process, and manage their feelings. So we want to help caregivers and children label those feelings. The reason that we do that, there's a phrase that Dan Siegel, the same person that does the hand brain, says, name it to tame it. So I like that. It sticks in my head really well. And what it's really essentially saying is that the more that we know about our feelings, what it looks like in our body, what happens when I'm angry, right? My shoulders might go up here, my hands get balled up into fists if I'm angry. When I know what's happening in my body, when I can name what that feeling is, often I know what to do with it. It doesn't mean I need to push that anger away. It's okay to feel that feeling, but what's something productive I can do when I'm angry rather than throwing the chair? We want to allow all feelings. One thing we like to say is feelings are not good or bad. They just are. And if you grew up how I did, there were absolutely bad feelings, right? When I say bad feelings, what are some feelings that come to mind? Anger, yeah, right? It's not one that is super socially accepted still, right? What else? Frustrated, sadness, right? Being incredibly sad, it's a feeling. Jealousy too, those are bad feelings. We want to be able to help ourselves and help our youth understand that feelings just simply are. And when we put them on that equal playing field, we can really normalize those feelings and we can open up conversations about them. And the more we're doing that, the more that we can help to destigmatize mental illness and support mental health more. We also want to offer different options for safe expression. We just talked about this. What works for one person might not work for another. What works for me today might not work for me tomorrow because maybe I'm in a different mood. Maybe I'm in a different situation. So again, keep helping patients to build those toolkits. All right, we made our way all the way around solving problems. This builds resilience by increasing confidence to navigate future challenges. Between this and independence, I think we're really focusing on some things that can help to raise some young people who are ready to be able to take on challenges, right? We don't want a ton of youth growing up to think that they need to be perfect and need that direct support all the time. We want to foster that independence, and we want to help them understand how to solve problems. We want them to know that it's okay to make mistakes. And we might not want to share our largest mistakes as adults, and especially as providers. We might not want to just share our biggest mistake. We want to be able to instill trust, but a low stakes mistake is okay to share. It's actually super helpful for young people to know that we as adults make mistakes too. So failure is an option, and that's often when we learn the most. Another really great way to be able to have conversation about solving problems is a really slight shift in our language, but just using how instead of why questions. So this might be similar to the calm flipping our lid kind of feeling, but when someone asks a why question, when there is a problem that's going on, how might I feel if I say, why did you do that? How are you likely going to feel? Exactly, yeah. Feel attacked, feel like someone's accusing you. That can really get our defenses up and have us on guard. Maybe a young person is starting to think about, okay, I got to come up with an excuse. That's good enough. Why did I do that? So it's a super slight shift in language, but one that we want to be mindful of is trying out how and framing it around that. Talk to me about how we got here. Let's have a conversation about how we handle this when it happens again, right? Young people are going to fight with their siblings, right? That is inevitable. They spend a whole lot of time together, and usually they're not the same exact person. They have differences, and that's where they navigate things through play and through arguing with one another. So we know that's inevitable. So how can we talk about what's going to happen next time? And we want to allow for natural consequences, again, as long as our patients are in safe situations. So these are our resilience sheets. Again, these are on our website, and you can print these out for free. And they include all of these strategies that we were just talking about with our resilience building blocks. These large circle letters are not actually on the page. That's just more to give you a sense of how you can incorporate all of those throughout your talking points. And these are all kind of grouped by age and developmental level. So I think that can be super helpful too. I've known providers that have used this as talking points throughout their well visit. And I know others who have really effectively just been able to mention it, staple it to the forms as the family's heading out the door. And that's something that they can explore on their own time. These are our resilience toolkit materials, and this is hopefully the only time I sound sales pitchy, so I apologize, but these are the items that you can order endlessly if your clinic is able to take the training. It just needs to be 50% or more of the people at your clinic to take the training. We offer it virtually and in person. I will drive out to you. I really appreciate being able to spend time with all of you. So if you found this valuable, feel free to just find our information on our website at strongforlife.com. You can register people for another training. We also offer them monthly. So some of the things that we talked about are our coping handouts. We have one-pagers for all different coping strategies, deep breathing, journaling, progressive muscle relaxation, grounding, all of those good things to be able to support patients. And then we'll go through a couple of other things that we have. These ones, again, are all free on our website to just be able to print out if you would like to. These two handouts really focus on communication and emotional expression. So Some communication strategies that we didn't get a chance to go into as deeply are active listening, right? So that nonverbal and those verbals, nodding, showing that I care about what you're saying. And I know that sometimes we're actively taking notes, we're typing notes on the computer while we're getting told a lot of different updates. Sometimes listening actively is just as simple as saying, I'm going to write this down. I care and I want to remember for next time. So I'm listening to what you're saying. I may just be typing too. So just giving some transparency to that. Reflecting is a great strategy for being able to share back and reflect what you're hearing. So you can do that directly by just saying what you heard someone say, and then asking, does that sound right? Otherwise, you can give kind of a summary. So what I'm hearing from you is that social studies has been really challenging this year, and that your teacher doesn't call on you, and that's making you feel disappointed. Does that sound right? Or I'm hearing that your head's been really hurting. You've been getting more and more headaches. Does that sound right? Does that sound like what you just shared? So then it gives patients a chance to tell us, yes, that is what's going on. You're on it, you're tracking, or no, that's not what I said, right? I'm actually feeling this way. We also want to be able to incorporate different emotional expression strategies, like normalizing feelings and naming feelings. And again, we talked about this, but if there's anything that you take away from today, I would hope that it would be that feelings aren't good or bad. They just are. So we want to be able to normalize those feelings. Again, even if we're seeing some unique behaviors, we want to be able to set limits on that behavior, but validate that feeling. It's okay to be sad. It's actually totally normal. I get sad sometimes too. Here's some things I do when I get sad. What do you do? And we want to help name those feelings too. So these are our feelings wheel and emoji feelings. Here's some more coping skills sheets. The one on the left comes in poster form. So I love visuals. It can be a really great way to just add them into your conversations. So tell me about which one of these you've used this week. Which one of these have you tried so far? Which one have you tried that you don't like and you don't want to do again? Because that's okay too. And then just to review, talking about those healthy habits, all of these things I'm sure you're used to doing, and I'm sure a lot of you are doing an incredible job of incorporating mental health and emotional health strategies in the work that you're doing. Our goal is really to just be able to be more intentional about it and put a name to it and help with those things like labeling and expression of emotions. So we know that all of the strategies that we named from a prevention lens, our goal is to be able to use all of those, but we know that there will still be some young people who will benefit from some additional supports. So we want to be mindful of that too. So we've created a behavioral and mental health referral sheet that's also on our site. This can be super helpful for caregivers because we know that the mental health system can be super complex and hard to understand. I've been working in this system for over a decade, and it's still complicated to me to be able to navigate things like insurance policies changing and what's covered and where families can get access. So we want to be able to make this just a little simpler for families. So this kind of tip sheet breaks down different types of clinicians. So if they're seeing letters behind someone's name, they can kind of get a sense for what does this person actually do? What service are they providing? What's the difference between a therapist and a psychologist and those kinds of things. Just some really general information on types of therapy, questions to ask when families are searching for a mental health care provider, and some things to know about therapy that can be helpful. And on this sheet on the back, it has a QR code that links to helping families find a clinician here in Georgia, and it is categorized by county too. So lastly, this is just a little bit of information on types of care. Again, something that you may be super familiar with, but it can be really helpful in conversations with families when we're talking about mental health to be able to help them understand kind of how this system of intervention goes. So we talked about prevention strategies all day long. They're great. We can do them with all youth. Youth that might need a little bit of additional support when it comes to mental health are most likely always going to start in this blue area over here. So outpatient counseling services, which is just a fancy way of saying therapy, or medication management services. And not all families want to do that, and that is absolutely okay. But if they are seeking out support, that's likely going to be a really great place to start. Over here in green, that's where we start to get to even more intensive services. And these start to be more on a referral basis, and ending over here in inpatient programs or residential programs that are the more intensive forms of support. And then these are some great referral options and just numbers to have handy when we are talking about mental health and different ways to continue supporting our patients and families. GCAL is on there, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 988. I love sharing that with patients because you can call or you can text. So a lot of young people really appreciate being able to just text. I don't know many youth that actually make calls these days. So truly, I think that's a great option to be able to text for some additional support. And then we also have our children's behavioral health advice line. Again, behavioral health can be incredibly complex. So if there's a situation that you are experiencing with a patient that you are unsure of what to do next, feel free to call and somebody will be there to help support you and kind of talk you through what next steps could look like. So some key takeaways, wanting to incorporate mental health and emotional wellness into your well visits and in your patient-facing interactions, being able to incorporate things like resilience sheets or even just those resilience talking points, being able to offer some coping strategies to your families and patients, and then being able to utilize any resources and next steps that you heard from today or that you saw that stood out to you that you want to be able to utilize. We also have a ton of resources on our page. I'm from our behavioral mental health pillar. We also have a nutrition pillar. We have a injury and illness pillar, and we have a child safety and protection pillar. So all of those articles and resources and handouts are all housed in the same place, all from a prevention lens on strongforlife.com. We have some great handouts, articles for caregivers if they're unsure about how to talk about certain things. And then we also have some great links to videos. I love being able to shout those out to caregivers because at the end of a long day, I feel like the last thing a caregiver might want to do is be able to talk through a guided meditation or some deep breathing, but they can just hit play and there's this incredibly soothing voice that just talks people through a coping strategy like deep breathing, again, to prepare our minds and bodies for resting. I use this all the time as an adult and I really enjoy it. So I encourage you to try it if that sounds nice. And we are in our third year of our Raising Resilience campaign. So feel free if you'd like to. This is on our website as well. Otherwise, you can join the Raising Resilience mailing list. That just gives you kind of bite-sized nuggets of information about some of the things that we talked about today. And it's delivered monthly, only once a month, truly. And then if you enjoyed this training, we have other trainings in different areas. Some of you might be familiar with these already or may have taken some of them, but we have motivational interviewing, which can be really helpful when it comes to change talk. So our primary focus for that is raising healthy eaters and obesity prevention. So that's kind of the lens that we use for that, but it can be really helpful for any type of change talk motivation that you want to use with families. And then another training, Raising Healthy Eaters, just talking about strategies for supporting family with healthy eating habits. This is my information. Erin, my colleague, was the one that talked to you earlier about suicide prevention, and this is both of our contact information. Please feel free to email me at any time if you have questions that we don't get to today. If you tried strategies out and you want to share how it went, whether it's a success, I love hearing about those, or whether you say, I tried it, it didn't go well, what are you doing? That's okay too, because it's good to try things out and we can always collaborate. I'd love to be a thought partner. If you try something and it didn't go as well as you wanted, we can kind of try and formulate a different response, because I want to be able to support all the work that you all are doing. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I don't know if we have a moment for questions. We have time for questions. All right. Post lunchtime, no questions. Cool. Well, you will hopefully have my contact information if any questions do arise. Otherwise, thank you again.